Good morning everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, which will give you an insight into Payzone's FP&A process. I'm Carol Lockman, Head of Marketing at Myogen, and I'll be speaking with one of our clients, Lee Hawthorne, Business Intelligence Analyst with Payzone. So before I introduce Lee, I'll tell you a little bit about Myogen. We are a forecasting, planning and analysis consultancy with offices in Dublin, London and Doha. We work with companies in a variety of different sectors and have been working with Payzone for the last 3 years. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Lee. Thanks for joining us this morning, Lee.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Carol.
So just to tell you a little bit about Lee, Lee is a qualified ACMA with extensive FP&A experience. He has been involved in numerous planning and BI projects within a variety of different companies, both large and small. Lee has been with Payzone now for the last 5 years, and Myogen have been working with Lee for the last 3 years. So I suppose to start, Lee, can you tell us a little bit about Payzone?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I think it's important we set a picture about Payzone. It's going to help people really understand the rest of this talk. So let me begin. Payzone UK is a British branded leading consumer payments network. We actually connect service providers with customers via terminals that are located in stores throughout the UK. So through our network, we enable customers to pay bills, buy travel tickets, and they can top up their phone or even use a debit or credit card. We have lots of different clients, and each of those clients have many different products on our network. You know, and what we see essentially is it's typical, and the transactions are very different. What this basically means for us in finance is that we've got multiple dimensions from which we need to plan for. On top of that, we've got multiple variables that impact on demand. So these factors make for a really interesting plan, and I hope you begin to see some of these challenges as we talk.
Great, okay, thanks for that. So I suppose just to start then, could you give us an idea of the issues you were having around FP&A before you got in touch with us? What were the challenges you were experiencing prior to implementing a solution?
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, Carol. You've got to really think back, you know, because it's so different today. It really is. It's like a different world. You know, so just let me have a think back. You know, so we were actually using Excel to capture the budget via templates. I think many people do that. So yeah, and it kind of worked well. You know, it wasn't majorly troublesome, that aspect of it. After people submitted the budget, we then store it in a database. You know, and then we'd run reports from the database, but we'd send the results back into Excel. I'd say it worked okay, you know, but you've got to appreciate, like many others probably in this situation, at the time you're very blinkered to any potential improvements. You think what you've got is good enough, you know, and we're a little bit guilty of that, I think. One of the recurring issues that we had was grappling with those multi-dimensions that I mentioned earlier. I think Excel is a great tool for many things, but we found that unless you were an Excel expert, you know, the mileage that we would get back would be quite varied. You know, I'll be honest, you know, outside of finance, you don't really find too many Excel experts. You know, if we can just think back about the process and just put a little bit more flavour on this, essentially, we tried various approaches with Excel and the database. And what we essentially found was that each one of them had data integration limits, or I suppose heavy maintenance was involved. You know, the production of the templates, consolidation. And, you know, at Payzone, we don't rest on our laurels. We really felt that we could do something better. And one of our aspirations at the time was that we should unshackle ourselves from the desktop. We felt that was a limit in our capability. We're business partners at Payzone session. We found basically it's quite hard to be a business partner when your head is buried in Excel. So I think that sums up really some of the issues that we had.
Great, great. Well, thanks for that. Gives us some insight. So what would you say was the catalyst then that made you decide to look beyond spreadsheets?
Yeah, some of our additional aspirations that we wanted essentially were we wanted to deploy role-in planning as well as driver-based forecasting. But we recognise, right, to do this, we can't just duplicate our existing process. It's not going to work. We have to make the process much more lean. We have to remove much of the maintenance. And on top of this, I think I mentioned, we want them to be effective business partners. And just for a minute, let me just tell you my thinking along these lines. As finance professionals, we like our terminology right. We know the business rules well, and we know the data. And I can put my hand up. I'm guilty like many others in finance. When we talk to people from the business, we use our own language, and we expect that they understand the complex financial terms as well as we do. It's not the case. So just to give an example on that, something that people can relate to, if you think about a sale, it goes through a conversion process, and then it goes through various stages of a process before the sale is booked on the ledger. It's not hard to see that asking a sales director to predict revenue, it's probably going to be hit and miss, isn't it?
Yeah.
So instead of asking for revenue, we should start thinking about things that, let's ask them the question, things about drive revenue. Things like conversion rate or leads. That's the language that the sales director understands. If you like, we can apply the business rule, to that essentially, and then convert that into revenue. We don't have to ask the sales director to do it. Of course, he's going to sign off on it. He doesn't get away with it that easy, but he doesn't have to actually do the work. So that was pretty much one of the catalysts.
Great. So I suppose, how did you go about finding the right solution then? How did you hear about Myogen and Adaptive Insights?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that, Carol. 2 years prior to the deployment, I was at a SEMA event, and basically just chatting to someone sat next to me. Essentially, we were talking about budgeting, as you do, and he introduced me to Adaptive. He mentioned adaptive planning, and my interest was spiked, from that. Kind of came back to the office, like always, you've got many projects on the go. We were working on a big BI project at the time, and we were probably a little blinkered to the potential game-changing nature of the technology. We said, oh, it looks interesting, but we didn't progress it at that point. So time passed, and I suppose the easiest way of saying it is probably through the many pain points, we eventually built the will to make a bigger change.
Great. So I suppose, in that process then, over that time period, did you look at other tools or look at other companies, or?
We did, yeah, we did. Essentially 2 years on, we found the market to be much more developed. So we actually looked at three different cloud providers, including Adaptive, and we matched their platform and services. It's quite important, that one. We matched that to our requirements. Essentially, we found it very competitive, and each of the providers have different strengths or weaknesses. You really have to match the provider to your own requirements.
Okay, so you felt Adaptive Insights and Myogen suited your needs, and that's, I suppose, one of the main reasons.
Yeah, that's right. It worked really well. The process, the evaluation process. I think, again, all this is new, to me at the time. Say, because as you mentioned in the introduction, I've been involved in many planning projects, using the traditional software. You say, if you just talk to the points about this one, you say, in a short space of time, right, we were able to evaluate each demo. And you think, I think it's a side benefit of the cloud, really. All providers, if they're worth their salt, can spin up something in minutes for you to evaluate and review. And then, just for a second, if you can compare this to the old way of working, where it would vary, right? But typically, you might ask IT for a server. You'd then haggle with the service provider to give you a fully featured demo. It's very time-consuming, right? You say, and a side effect of this, essentially, by doing a thorough evaluation, we felt that the risks were reduced. In short, we didn't need to rely on marketing messages alone.
Okay, okay, great. So, I mean, I suppose what made you, choose us, amongst the other competitors? I mean,
Yeah, Myagin in particular, when I essentially talked to Adaptive, they recommended Myagin to us. We recognised you as one of the leaders in EMEA, and we chose to use a deployment partner, at the beginning because, you know, we felt we could probably do it on our own, but it'd be much more effective, if we worked with a partner. And I remember a meeting well with Myagin in the early days where I basically said to you, here's our existing process, and you very quickly have to assimilate quite a complicated Excel-based planning process. I remember saying to you then, right, now you've done that, I want you to spec something out that is different. Don't give me the same thing. Give me something that utilizes or leverages the technology. So I don't want to plan headcount in the same way, or I don't want to plan revenue necessarily in the same way. If there's a better way that we can do it, I want you to tell me about it. So we had those discussions early on, before committing any resource. And some of the things you were saying, essentially, it kind of it made me believe that we were truly on a different road, essentially, and we're going to be able to hit all our aspirations. So it was quite an easy decision, really.
Great, great. Well, thanks for that. So can you describe the implementation experience, the rollout process itself? Was it what you were expecting, Lee, or, did it take longer than expected, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, again, it was something new, Carol. Just let me touch upon a minute, some of the traditional projects I've worked on, typical projects, you spec them out, and a big project, 9 months maybe, and you deliver it, and of course you've got key milestones and things, but what you generally find is at the end of the project, a lot of the things are out of date. You have to go back and rework them, because the business is dynamic, right? Things change, the business environment changes. You say, right, we did something different with our deployment. We basically we spec'd out a full end-to-end project, but then we split it into 3 different stages. So each phase would deliver a key capability, such as integrated reporting or CapEx. And this was useful for a couple of reasons. Number one, it allowed the knowledge transfer to take place. Your consultants are really good at that, and it's really, really good. A lot of consultants basically like to keep the knowledge, they want to keep you on the hook. Essentially, you didn't really find that with Myagin at all. You say, very happy to give away the secrets, so to speak. So yeah, and
Good to hear.
in terms of the deployment time, right? People don't believe me. Talk to my friends, who have worked with those old projects on. Say, it's this stage basically. It was 4 weeks. 4 weeks, and typically each phase took that long. Say that's so good. Because very close to it. You can basically say, you start to get to use the software and understand it, build up our capability. So that was useful.
Great, great. Well, that's certainly good to hear, Lee. So, what would you say then are the 3 main benefits that you've seen from implementing the system? How's it really helped you?
Yeah. So, number one, strategic planning is built in. So what I mean by this is, if you change a tactical plan, which we often do, you say, all right, we get an instant update for the strategic plan. It's only a small thing that, it's 1 sentence, but I think, it's something that we really appreciate. We don't want to have a separate process, for the strategic plan. Another benefit, scenario planning. Essentially we get calls from the MD, model a new scenario. I think previously, in other companies, this would have been a headache. You say, God, many late nights. Whereas with Adaptive, it's very simple. It really is adaptive. It's very easy to change. Essentially, you can do things like model confidence factors or sensitivity, and that gives you additional insight into the forecast. I think one of the softer benefits it's almost like a side benefit, but such a big one is that because you're spending less time on this, on the planning and overall, you say, well, we've got more time to work with our business stakeholders as partners rather than controllers. So it really changes the game, changes the nature of the whole relationship that you have with the business. It's as powerful as that. It goes beyond the budgeting.
Great, great. That's great to hear. So I suppose in terms of best practices, then FP&A best practices, what would you say you've developed using adaptive insights?
Yeah, there's an interesting one here again because a lot of this was quite new to us. You're saying, right? We actually looked at the book Beyond Budgeting. It's an old book, Beyond Budgeting, but it's still highly relevant today. It really is. So this is what introduced us to things like rolling forecasts and connecting the budget to the real business activity, adapting the budget, etc. So I recommend people have a read of that if they haven't already done so. Another best practice regarding IT, you say it's very easy with cloud-based software, for business people essentially to deploy these types of projects, and you don't need any, or you may not need any work from IT. So it's interesting, this one. You say, right, just do it without them, just get on and do it. Well, no, best practice really is bring them along, let them know what you're doing, because they're probably the gatekeepers to the data that you're going to need later on. So it's much better to bring them along. They can probably add some value, but it's very different though. You don't need IT like you did in the past. You don't need IT to spec up a server. You don't. So again, the whole relationship with IT is changing. I think one final best practice I would give is get your key business users involved early on. It's tempting to just get on and do it yourself, but get them involved. Ask for their opinion. Because it's going to be easier when you come to deploy it later on. Okay,
great. So I suppose this leads us on then to the Adaptive Insights user group. You've gone ahead, Lee, and set that up yourself. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Carol. Yeah, so it's been, like I say, years are passing, since we deployed Adaptive. I wanted to join a user group to network with customers of Adaptive, because it's not hard to see that Adaptive customers are some of the most innovative thinkers in FP&A. And against this backdrop, Adaptive continuously developed the product. Whilst they're very good at communicating new features and such, I felt that we could boost our own performance through this networking. So we meet online every 2 months. The usual format is a speaker plus Q&A, but generally we try and communicate some ideas that are really constructive and practical. So what else? We limit the event to 30 to 60 minutes, and we record it as well because we appreciate not everyone can take the time out. So we share that to Adaptive customers as well as user group members. Yeah, so you can. If anyone is interested, you can actually join the user group. We welcome new members. Just click on the bit.ly link on the slide there.
Great, great. Well, I think, I'm sure you'll definitely get some interest from this morning's webinar. So I suppose for people who are listening in this morning, Lee, what would you tell, other finance professionals about automating their budgeting and planning? What would you recommend for them to do?
Yeah, just really going to speak to my own experience, really. And you say, we were stuck on the Excel treadmill. We were just like a lot of people are. Say, with the emergence of cloud providers, there really is an alternative option that just might suit you. There really is. The technology is so different. And I'm not sure when it changed. But it's so rich. The applications are so rich and developed. That there really is an alternative there for us now. And if we think of ourselves as finance professionals, we can actually drive this change ourselves. We don't have to rely on someone else. We know the data. We know the process as well. You know your own pain points. So you know what's required. The last piece of the puzzle is the service and support. The real benefit really is if we detach ourselves from Excel, we can spend much more time partnering the business to add value using our expertise. I tell you, Carol, I didn't qualify, to become an expert in Excel necessarily. So yeah. Just let me say, Carol, just on that, I can't recommend enough that you work with a third party like Myogen. We recognise the benefit early on, essentially, through the numerous deployments that they've worked on. And whilst Adaptive is a usable system, it really is usable. You can start to use it very quickly. At the same time, it's very powerful. So if you really want to tap that power, you need to use someone like Myogen because they know the ins and outs as well as best practices like no one else. But learn the tools for yourself. And open your mind to the knowledge transfer that's going to take place. But above all, remember to keep it simple.
Good advice, I think, Lee. Well, thank you for that. And I suppose on a final note then, where do you see the future of FP&A going from what you've seen to date?
Yeah, such an interesting time to be working in FP&A. It really is. Things are changing. I think if I think back to my earlier experience in other companies, and I'm sure this is the same today for some companies. It's you work, you spend 3 to 6 months on the budget, and it's such a heavy activity, lots of data movement, formulas, consolidation, reporting. You start the process again. Oh, what a headache! Can't believe I used to work that way. You say, well, now the budget process as it was then is eliminated. I think with technology and behaviour, we can basically have a continuous plan that we update and adapt. And I think an outcome of this is that we're spending less time on the FP element of FP&A. The planning process becomes much more lean. And at the same time, it doesn't get any easier for us. We're seeing an increase in data size and velocity. If everybody's seeing that, I am. And this has given us new opportunities to add value in different ways. We can answer a much broader set of business questions, that reduce risk or improve demand. So in summary, I think if I was going to draw a picture, really, I would have the FP&A is reducing and the A is getting bigger. I think that's probably the way it's going. But that's just my opinion and what I see.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much for that, Lee. We appreciate that. It's great to get some insight into what you guys are doing and to share it with other people to see how they can maybe make improvements. So there's some links there you can see if you're looking for information on the user group or on Adaptive Insights or Myogen. Please check them out. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us through the website, so we'd love to hear from you. So thanks again, Lee. We appreciate it, and the best of luck with
Cheers,
everything.
Carol. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.